Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Christy and I am so glad to have you here. Welcome to all the new subscribers and welcome to everybody that has been here all along. Just some housekeeping real quick. If you are new here, I'm Christy. I live in the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma, and I have 12 dogs and chickens and one special chicken named Steve, who's kind of the mascot of the channel, lives in a coop in the house. He doesn't have feet, so he's not safe outside. He's a miniature chicken, so he got picked on, and he's in here now. So, with all of that in mind, sometimes there's background noise here. Sometimes Steve chimes in because he has strong feelings, but I do have him watching one of his soap operas right now, so maybe he'll be quiet. We have gotten a lot of rain lately and our creek is overflowing. So the bulk of the dogs are in the house right now and two of them are puppies and they sound like gremlins when they play. I will do my best to keep them quiet. If it gets too bad, I will mute my microphone and tell them to hush. But just so you're aware, everybody that's been here already knows that this is real life. My daughter is here. There's always something going on. So you may hear stuff in the background and I'm sorry, but that's life, right? I'm also waiting for my son's truck to be delivered from California. He's getting ready to deploy and we had it shipped out here. So if it shows up, I guarantee the dogs will bark. But anyway. Not feeling super hot today, but I did want to get this video out there. I had another video planned. It was kind of a Mother's Day type video about some bad moms, but I put that aside because I talked with Justin Weber, who is Ivy's dad, and there's some information that's coming out that it needs to be addressed. We have Brian Enton in Oklahoma now, which is kind of exciting. Brian Enton he's a good guy, he cares, and he tends to get things done. So I'm happy that he's here. He was at Ivy's and they reported from there yesterday. Hopefully he can get some answers that no one else seems to be able to get. The law enforcement, they don't want to talk to the press, the local press. I don't know if Brian can get through to them. They don't want to talk to anybody. They aren't doing news conferences. The things that you would think you would see with a mass unaliving such as this, the failures in our system, you would think they would want to address that, but they don't. And I'm kind of starting to get a feeling of why. You will see above my head, I have information for our governor's office, Governor Kevin Stitt. His phone number is up there, and I and Justin and everybody involved, after seeing this video, we would encourage you to call and let him know how you feel. Let him know what you think. Call Okmulgee County Sheriff's Office. Call everybody, lawmakers, whoever, because we've got to get some changes going. So I'm going to keep that up there instead of my logo today because it's more important that you be able to get that information and use it. So as I said, this is our Governor Stitt. He makes a lot of decent decisions. I am a Cherokee Indian, so he tends to not go along with the tribes much. So sometimes I disagree with him. Today, I'm going to change one letter in his name, and today, for me, this fits. Instead of Governor Stitt, he's Governor Poop Emoji. So Justin informed me that our fearless leader, Mr. Stitt, vetoed legislation that basically, if you're a tribal member, a lot of our criminal activities, what have you, are handled tribally. If it was on, tribal lands, what have you. But he vetoed a law. Right now, if you are tribal, and you're a SO, you only have to register with your tribe, apparently, not with the state. And they were trying to change that because, like I said, I'm Cherokee. And I think I don't care if you're tribal. Everybody needs to know if you're an SO, right? Everybody should have access to that information, because I know a lot of people think like we live on, reservations and teepees or whatever, but we don't. I live in the middle of nowhere, but, we live in the suburbs. We live in the cities. We live in the house right next door. And if you were living next door to a member of one of our many tribes here in Oklahoma, and they were an SO, how would you feel if you didn't have access to that information because said person was a member of a tribe? They were trying to change that. Governor Stitt vetoed it. So now we're still stuck in this cycle of we have tribal SOs out there in Oklahoma that only the tribe knows about. That's wrong on so many levels. And it just kind of goes along with everything that went wrong in Henryetta. How many of these people are slipping through the cracks? How many of these people, well, you're going to see as we go into this video, this is a mess. This investigation was a mess. This whole situation was a mess from the time they let him out of the Department of Corrections. Also, I wanted to show you, I'm wearing my Be Like Ivy shirt today. I think I told you before, I'm making hoodies and shirts for the family, and I wanted to wear it today. I told you in my previous video that Ivy played softball, and her coach said that she was always in a good mood. She always was smiling, and she never complained. And everybody always said, I want to be like Ivy. And that's kind of what her family is trying to spread, that we should all be like Ivy. And, I want to not complain, and I want to be in a good mood. But when I see what has happened and what is continuing to happen, I have to complain. And I think if Ivy were still here, she would be complaining as well. The girl that never complained, she would have a lot to complain about. Okay, so let's move on from our fearless, poopy leader, who today just didn't make me very happy. Now, the investigators that originally went to the scene, I've told you before, they entered the house, no one was in there, and then there they go. They subsequently found the 7 out further onto the property, and then they didn't go back in to the house. So I saw this tweet. Erin Christie is a local reporter. She's been covering this and doing a really great job. And she said, although the initial investigators on scene of the McFadden case are not talking to the media, they are talking on Facebook on a page without private settings. This is what they said, the investigators on that Facebook page. Nothing in that house had to do with the homicide investigation. What? I showed you the video from inside that house. This was a case of a SO taking the lives of 6 other people and himself. You walk in that house and you see what you see in there, and you don't think any of that might have something to do with him being an SO. Okay. They said the crime scene was on property, so therefore nothing in the house is connected to the crime investigated. Last time I checked, nobody I heard of getting killed with a computer or cell phone. There might be child porn on the phones and the computers, and there might have been sex crimes occurring with chains and sex toys, and might have been illegal drug use in that house, but none of that was involved in the homicide. How do you know? How do you know? You didn't collect any of that stuff to see if it was connected. There could have been DNA on that stuff. The drugs could have been used to drug the victims. The horrible acts could have been filmed and on a computer or a cell phone. Those chains, those restraints could have had the victim's DNA on it. Maybe it was involved, but they just left it. And then they go on to say, or she says, excuse me. So I guess there is your explanation into why they just chose to release all of that back to the family, despite admitting it was clear other crimes could be involved, but that's not the one they were there for. So basically they were like, okay, all this other stuff was probably going on. It's very clear when you walk in that place that it was going on, but that's not why we're here. And, you know, this guy, he's dead, so can't really prosecute him for these crimes, so we don't need to investigate it. Wrong. So everybody, obviously, is upset. They're up in arms. They're contacting the Henryetta police, the Okmulgee police, about what these guys are saying in a public forum on Facebook. And then the Henryetta Police Department lieutenant deleted the comments per request from the OSBI. So they went back and they deleted all that stuff, which doesn't fix anything, does it? We know what they were thinking, what they were feeling, why they did such a shitty job. It's already out there. And the news happened to screenshot every single one of them. So they have it. So you can't go back and delete and be like, no, we didn't say that. No, we didn't do that. No. Gotcha. Do you really think that we're not going to look into this? That we're not going to deep dive all of you involved? Wrong. Because we all want answers. Not just for ourselves, but for the families of the victims. There were 5 innocent children who lost their lives at the hand of this SO. And it's like you don't even care. It's like you want to just ignore it and hope it goes away. Well, it's not going to go away. It's not. Now, a lot happened last week in the news. You know, we've had a lot going on, right? We've had Lori Vallow was found guilty. Letitia Stout was found guilty. You know, we've had a lot going on. The Jacqueline Trezell West case, I think closing arguments were this morning. So the news cycle kind of does what the news cycle does, right? It moves on to the next story. And we've had storms here, tornadoes. And yes, it's all important and it needs to be covered, but we can't just move away from this and forget about what happened there, because there's lessons to be learned from this, right? For all of us, not just Oklahoma, the whole nation, the whole world, how these people are being handled. Because I promise you, what happened here, this isn't the only place that this is going on. And my background today, that's the Oklahoma flag, but it's on broken concrete. And the reason I went with that today is because Oklahoma, we're broken. I'm a proud Okie. I moved back here. I moved home because I wanted to be here. That's what it is. It's home. I love the state. I am so proud of my state. But this failure is embarrassing. And it's inexcusable. And the way it continues to be handled is just, it's downright disgusting. So like I said, we've got Brian Enton here for News Nation, and he was on with Banfield Beige last night. And I want to play a few clips from the interviews, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about these awful, awful failures and how this family, it feels like it's just continuing to be, you know, all the families are being let down again and again and again. And all of these failures, it's just like re-victimizing them. They're trying to process what is probably the worst thing they will ever have to process. But how can they when every day another screw up is brought to light? They deserve peace and answers and accountability from somebody. Because on this earth, McMonster will not be held accountable. There won't be an arrest. There won't be a trial. He won't get the death penalty. None of that. None of that. But that doesn't mean that things still don't need to be done in this case, and that changes don't need to be made going forward. So here's my first clip I wanted to share with you from Brian Enton. He's out at Ivy's house.
There are some weird things that don't make a lot of sense, like the chaplain signing off on the marriage certificate and the witness being the sheriff's secretary. Have you been able to sort any of that out?
From my understanding, she's also, or the secretary is also the same person who is in charge of registering sex offenders as well. And the secretary is the one who's supposed to schedule visits and do all that. And it's a little confusing that the same person who's supposed to be in charge of the sexual registry and whatnot is the same people or person that's marrying and signing off on marriage certificates for sex offenders to marry women that they clearly manipulated.
Do you think the failures initially with not searching was it an oversight, or do you think there's something more to it with what you're learning about the marriage certificate?
At this point, I think there's more to it. I don't want to call it a cover-up. I think it was, they already knew, and they just wanted to do a light investigation and say, yep, we found their guy, that's it. There's no other story here. But yet we now know there's a lot more to the story that they didn't want to investigate, and that is the question, why?
So they don't know the answers, Ashley. They wanted to clear something up. They're not getting additional information from the sheriff's office or from the state now investigating. They only know what we know. We're going to be on the ground here really trying to figure out this marriage license thing, because it's very, very strange.
All of it. Why they haven't given press conferences, why they won't answer questions from the press, why they blame the press for misinformation when all we've been doing is begging them to do their jobs and then tell us why they haven't and what is happening. It's been confounding to me. And then to see that there's a connection between law enforcement and this filthy beast is extremely upsetting. The other question I have real quickly, Brian, is that Henryetta, Oklahoma is a population of 5,600 people. That's little. I can't understand how that small of a community how it can't be rampant information that that guy is a sex offender and he married Holly down the street with the 3 kids. How that isn't just all over the place.
Listen, I know it's surprising. You'd think in a small town there are a lot of sex offenders around here, though. We've gone through the list. Justin Ivy's dad was telling me even after the murders, they were at their other son's kindergarten graduation. There was a sex offender, he says, in the audience. The principal had to come out and tell that man to leave, someone who they say had been at the school before. They believe if these murders hadn't happened, they wouldn't have even been noticing and tracking these guys the way they are right now.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there. First of all, I have been involved in a lot of other Oklahoma cases, and I see a lot of corruption with government, with law enforcement, and I don't like to say that. I'm not anti-law enforcement by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not anti-law enforcement against the ones that actually do their job. I am against the ones that are lazy and ineffective and don't do their jobs. And I see it a lot. I see connections between judges, law enforcement, jailers, and people that are convicted down the line, that have been convicted before. It happens. It happens. And he was in prison for 17 years. And here in Oklahoma, unfortunately, we have I probably shouldn't say this on YouTube, the UAB, which is the Aryan Brotherhood. We have the Irish mob, and they're both very large and active in our prison system. The head guy for the UAB, they had to build him a special cell in McAllister. He managed to slip out of the death penalty, and they had to build him his own special cell. He's the most dangerous prisoner in Oklahoma. Look it up. Michael Smith. And a lot of the cases that I have worked on end up being intertwined with those two groups. Now, apparently, McMonster claimed to be Klan. I don't know. He was in jail that long, it's hard for me to imagine that he didn't come across one or both of the groups that I just mentioned. Does he have connections there? He's got connections somewhere because he got that contraband cell phone, right? A lot of the missing people that I have looked into were actually taken out by one of those groups, and when they went to arrest one of the people involved in one of those missing persons that ended up being identified by bone fragments that were burned on a property owned by Michael Smith's family, let's just say that he may have gotten a heads up that they were coming to get him, so he had time to get away. Maybe it was law enforcement, maybe it was a judge, it was a lawyer. I'm not going to say specifically, but let's just say he was tipped off, okay? So it happened. And I'm digressing here into another case that I will talk about later, so let's get back on here. All I'm saying is, could there be a cover-up? I'm just going to say that I wouldn't be shocked. I'm not accusing them of a cover-up. I'm just saying I wouldn't be shocked. I think that they probably, when they realized who it was, they probably had an oh shit moment and said, oh man, we effed up. Look what this guy has done. We need to make this go away. And they probably thought, everybody would be like, oh, it's so tragic, but they wouldn't really dig in. But as Justin and Webster told me, they effed with the wrong family. They're not going to let this go. They're not. And they shouldn't. It's not like, oh, he took out these people and he took himself out, so nothing to see here, move on. No. This wasn't just your average person who went nuts and took out all these people. This was a registered SO who was released early from the Department of Corrections while he had other charges pending that involved a contraband cell phone and CP on that phone, sexting with a minor from prison. He got let out for good behavior, which, you know what, if you have good behavior in prison, more power to you. If you're trying to better yourself, if you're trying to like get educated, doing these programs, whatever, and really rehabilitate yourself, then bravo. I understand how the good time credits work. I get it. But if you accumulate all of this credit for good behavior and then you mess up, why isn't there a deduction from your good behavior? Why do those just stay the same? Like, oh, he's doing good. He got in trouble, but it doesn't affect your good behavior? How does that work? And if you get charged with another crime that directly correlates with what you're already in there for, which is SA of a minor, how can you still get out for good behavior? And apparently, he assaulted people in prison. He wasn't a model prisoner by any stretch of the imagination. So the math ain't mathin' on this one. I'll use my catchphrase, make it make sense, because if you're going to get credited for doing things right, shouldn't you get penalized for doing things wrong? It doesn't make sense. This man should have never been let out. He shouldn't have been let out early. Had he still been serving his original sentence, he wouldn't be out. He couldn't have been out to do this. And then why did it take 6 years for his new charges to finally go to court? They're like, oh, somebody broke their ankle, and then there was COVID, and there was this, and there was that. In 2017, we didn't have COVID, y'all. And Oklahoma barely shut down. Our governor wanted us to be like the first state back open. We barely shut down. So don't give me that crap. And when you talk about, well, how come he couldn't have been held awaiting his trial, and they say they can't jail somebody that hasn't been convicted, that's BS. There's all kinds of criminals sitting in jail waiting for their trial. Look at Idaho. Brian Kohberger, not convicted, sitting in jail since December. So go back and try again on that one. And then this whole marriage license thing. So in the state of Oklahoma, if you're an SO, apparently you can live with children if they are your biological children or stepchildren and they were not your victim. Okay? I don't know. That's how it is. My thinking on this, well, I'll get it when we get into the compliance part. I'll talk about it a little bit more, but he's with Holly and he moved in before they were married and she has her kids, right? That's illegal. Okay? They let this guy out on good behavior. They can't have that, right? That makes them look bad. Like, damn, we let him out because he's supposed to be like, you know, doing great, doing good, turning his life around. And he's out here like 5 minutes and he's already in violation, right? So in one of the videos you're going to hear, I believe it was the lawyer that said it. I really think that whoever was supposed to be supervising him was like, you can't, if you guys want to be together, that's great. You're adults, have at it. But if the kids are going to be there, the only way you can be together is if y'all go get married. So we need to get you two married, and then it's all Gucci. Of all places to go get married, why in the hell would you go back to the jail? Do you know how many churches, justice of the peace, you know, all that there are around here? Sorry, that's the dogs. But he chooses to go back to the jail and get married by that chaplain. Hey, hold on. Sorry. But the person that signed as a witness is what kills me. She is the person in charge of registering the SOs. And we know, if you saw my last video, he was on the national registry, but not the Oklahoma registry. Well, that's convenient. So you mean to tell me that this lady that should have registered him on that list, and apparently there was like a clerical error or whatever, for whatever reason, he's not there, but she was able to sign his marriage certificate. This is a man who SA'd a minor who had CP on a contraband phone, was sexting with a minor, and you're just like, hold on. And you're just like, okay, I will completely sign off on letting you marry this woman who has 3 minor children. Are you serious? Are you serious, lady? That's okay? Don't put him on the Oklahoma registry, but sign off for him to go get married and live with 3 minor children. No, ma'am. Sorry. Anyway, sorry, I am really fired up about this. So, and it goes deeper than that. When we start to get into the compliance stuff, there's a connection between this woman who is supposed to register the SOs, who signed the marriage certificate, and the cop that did the one and only compliance check for Jesse. Imagine that. Imagine that. So let's look at another video here. Oh, and as far as the SOs in the area, let me show you what I found. So this is a map that you can pull up, and this is just around where Jesse McMonster lived, right? Do you see all of those SOs in the area? It says at the top there's 27 just right around where he was at. Look at that. How many of those are being checked on? Well, maybe they are now that the police department's getting dragged through the mud. I hope so. Every single one of them needs to be checked. But how do we know? Hush it. How do we know that he wasn't in contact with these SOs and they had their own little ring going? Do you remember the 32 cell phones from my last video? 27? 32 phones. You do the math. This could have been a whole little ring they had going on. And no one is the wiser because nobody's checking on anything. Every one of them. Every single one of them. Could have CP from him. It could involve the kids, Holly's kids. God forbid they could have footage from that last horrific night and what those kids went through. And not just them, but the dark web. SOs from all over the world. Think about that. There needs to be accountability for this crap. And like he said, there's an SO at his son's kindergarten graduation who's been at the school at events. You know who else was at the school at events? Jesse. He was there for all the choir concerts and the track meets and all of that. Always at the school, and he's an SO. He had no right to be there. It's not allowed. But nobody knew. And she's like, I can't believe it's such a small town that it wasn't like, oh, this guy's an SO and he married Holly down the street. Nobody knew. Nobody knew that this guy was an SO because he wasn't on the damn state registry. So how could word spread when nobody even knew there was something to spread? And I talked about it in my last video, but do you know how we could have stopped him and the guy at the kindergarten graduation from being at those schools? The Raptor System. Justin told me about this system. There have been comments and messages sent to me from people all over Oklahoma that their school districts are using it and they love it. This needs to be state funded, federally funded. It should be in every school in every state to keep our kids safe. Screens, everyone. You don't have an ID, you're not getting in. And if you pop up as a sex offender or someone that doesn't have custody of those kids, whatever, you're not getting in. You're not getting access to those kids. This needs to be everywhere. You know, we worry about our kids enough that they're going to go to school and are they going to get shot? Well, we need to worry about this too. We need to worry about who has access to our children. This is a good system. Look into it. Go to their website. Like I said, this should be state funded, federally funded, whatever. It needs to be used by every single school district, in my humble opinion. But let's move on. Another video from Brian Enton.
They're shocked. They're still grieving. They're angry. You see video here. I went with Ivy's dad out to a garden that they've built in their backyard where people drop by plants, where they remember their daughter. It's so eerie being out here, Ashley. It's dark out here. You can barely see the house behind me, but just behind me is the house where these terrible things happen. And we've been showing that video, the video from inside that Ivy's grandmother, Shannon, shot with her cell phone. A lot of people don't realize that. It is Ivy's grandma who thought, when she went inside and started seeing these awful things, that she needed to record it with her cell phone. And she didn't only do it once. She went outside and they called the family attorney and said, what the heck is going on here? We don't think the police have even been inside this house. The attorney couldn't believe it and told Shannon, you need to go back inside and you need to get more video. So it was awful the first time. She had the bravery to go inside a second time to get that video that basically changed everything and opened the entire investigation all over again. Listen to what she told me about that. I mean, just going in that house, it doesn't take much to realize very quickly that things aren't okay.
No.
And if they did their job, they would have seen that from the get-go. But they failed.
An eye hook and chain on a kitchen counter, that's not normal. Was it always there? Don't know. Was it put in when, I don't know. It was like walking into doom when you walked in that house. The smell was just, and it wasn't a cat box smell.
When the attorney told you to go back in to get more video, I mean, as a grandma, that must have been difficult.
I couldn't have my daughter do it again. I didn't want to do it, but I had to. I think that if we hadn't, we wouldn't have what we have right now. I stay awake at night thinking about it. Just adding another question to that list.
So you can imagine, again, Ashley, not only having to go in once, but having to go in twice. And thank goodness she did, because that's the reason, really, that we're standing here right now.
It's astounding that the victims are going to be the people who are ultimately the detectives that help to solve whatever still lies ahead in this crime. And there's still a story to tell. Those families deserve the story of what happened.
And why should any family, number one, have to walk into that? You know, every time I think about it, it just shatters me. Of them walking into that house and finding what they found. And why should the victims have to be the detectives? Why are they doing the work that law enforcement should have been doing? Why are they finding the evidence? Why are they trying to protect the evidence so it doesn't get contaminated? Why? It's inexcusable. It's inexcusable. And then the way they were treated when the police came back out there was awful. You can see that in my other video. It's just, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. I've got one more video that I'm going to show you. This is with the family's attorney. And then we're going to talk about this compliance, which you might as well say was, it's a joke. It's a freaking joke. But we'll get into that right after this clip.
I want to bring in Cameron Spradling. He is a local attorney representing Ivy Webster's family, and he's live with me now. Cameron, we've been, periodically touching base with you to sort of find out the most we can, given the fact that law enforcement has been so tight-lipped. Do you have any updates at all since we spoke last week?
Yeah, this was so bizarre that this came about. It was kind of like a rumor that we were tracked down. I have a very good former FBI agent named Martha Justice, and she's my private investigator. And I put her on this problem with this marriage license, and I can try to give you a timeline if you'd like, but it looks like May of 2021, he moved into the community, Jesse McFadden, and checked in as a sex offender with the sheriff's secretary. And then it was about December 2021 that Holly got divorced. And then in March or so, we know that he was already living in the house. And in May, he comes back to the jail. And this is May of 2022. And he gets married by the jail chaplain, witnessed by the sheriff's secretary. And here's the crazy thing. And let me add one thing that you haven't mentioned. Less than a month after the marriage, there was only one time that a sheriff's deputy ever checked the house, and that was after the wedding. And there's no other checks at all before or after at the residence of this sex offender. And the check was done by the sheriff's the sheriff's secretary's son. And
Melissa Smalley's son is the sheriff's deputy that did the check at Jesse McFadden's house. Let me repeat that. Let me repeat that just so, because it's a lot. It's a lot for me to take in, and it's a lot for our audience to follow too. Melissa Smalley, who is the assistant deputy, she's with the sheriff's department. She's the assistant who signed the marriage certificate. She has a son who's a sheriff's deputy. You register sex offenders.
Yes.
Right. There's another nugget.
Her son, Crafton Smalley, is 30 years old and lives with her. And he did the site check in June of 2022, just after the marriage, and that was the only site check that was ever made at that house.
So,
And by the way,
I mean, wow.
yeah, and according to the site check, the documents himself, all he did was verify that he was at the house. That's all that took
Didn't
place.
go in and take a look at some of the restraints and the candied drugs. Okay. So then
Correct.
The next question is, if you're a registered sex offender, it's my understanding you have to check in every 3 months. It also, in his paperwork, says he was compliant. What does that mean if there was only one on-site check? What else would have happened or likely would have happened to get this compliant designation?
He didn't do anything. There's no explanation for that at all. There was only one check on him at the address. We don't have any proof that DHS ever went to that house and saw where those children were living at. We don't have any proof that anyone ever went into the house and looked
Cameron,
at the
would he have been going?
situation.
So I'm just trying to, I never, lived with or been close friends with a sex offender, but would it be possible that he would check himself in at the sheriff's department, bring donuts and say, hi, it's me, Jesse. I'm one of the good guys. I'm making it easy on you. You don't have to get in your cruiser and come to my ranch. I'll just come in and do it for you. How are you all?
I have two theories on this. The one theory is you have to understand that sex offenders are manipulative. They're brilliant at what they do in persuading people. And so when he checked in May, he just dropped in so they didn't have to go find him and endeared himself to them, introduced him to Holly, his fiance. Life is good. He was going to be their success story to them. And they opened their hearts to him, opened their chapel to him, opened their chaplain to him, opened the secretary, and they all had a big wedding. That's one theory, that they were all taking advantage. The other theory is that they knew before he was married that he was living in that house with 3 children, and he wasn't married. I mean, he wasn't married to her, and that would be a violation. So they suggested to him, come to the jail, let's get you married so that you won't have a problem anymore. And that's why her son was the one that did the site check 3 weeks after the marriage.
We are not finished this conversation. Wow. All of this stinks. I mean, really something's rotten in Denmark here. It stinks. And I want answers, and they just won't speak to the press because apparently we're the villains in this story, even though our screeching finally got them to come back and collect evidence. Cameron Spradling, thank you so much for this. And I am going to invite you back early and often because, like I said, I think we're just at the tip of the iceberg.
We are.
We are indeed. So I told you there was going to be another sketchy connection. The secretary that registers the sex offenders and signed the marriage certificate, her son is the one that did the compliance check. Her son, her 30-year-old son who lives at home with her, is the one that did the one and only compliance check. He didn't go in the house. He didn't look around. Okay, so let's think about that. So you're going to do this compliance check on a registered SO, and you know that he is married to a woman with 3 minor children. That's his preference, I guess you would say. He likes that age. Why wouldn't you go in and look around, see what kind of an environment these kids are living in? Maybe talk to the kids, make sure they're doing okay. Something, anything, but no. So this tweet is from another local reporter, and she said, "We asked for a detailed record of Jesse McFadden's home compliance checks. The Okmulgee County Sheriff's Office says they only conducted one home compliance check, and it was almost a year ago. It was June 24th, 2022. He was compliant on his 90-day check-ins." How does that work? How the hell does that work? Well, I will tell you the answer that they gave Justin, which is disgusting. Now, the sound on this is not great. You may have to turn it up. It was recorded on a cell phone, but he asked law enforcement, like, who's supposed to be doing these checks? And listen for the answer that they give this grieving father.
So who is supposed to be checking on the sexual offender?
It's public record. It's everywhere.
So nobody's supposed to come and do checks?
We do compliance checks, but it's like throw a dart. See which one we're going to do, because that's all we have the resources to do.
It's like throw a dart and see which one we're going to do, because that's the resources we have. That was their answer to the father of Ivy, who was killed at that house by that SO. Throw a dart. If they don't have enough resources, then our governor needs to get them the damn resources. So here is his one and only compliance check in his file. You can see it's from the 24th of June of 2022. His name's phone number, his address. It says, he's got these 3 kids, his stepkids. It's got, Rylee, Michael, and Tiffany on there, and their ages, the type of car that he was driving. And then the second page consisted of self-employed, provided credit card bill with name and address. And that's it, y'all. That was the compliance check. That was it. Like I said, he didn't go in, saw him at the house. Oh, hold on. I think somebody must be here. They saw him at the house. That's what they verified, that he was at the house. That's really it. And then as far as being compliant on the 90-day check-ins, I don't know if he was calling in and being like, yep, still live there. Yep, still self-employed. Everything's great. And they just took his word for it, or what? But nothing about this is okay. Nothing about this is right. Nothing about this whole thing has been handled the way it should have been. We need change here. And we're trying to get it through this session in Oklahoma. But this session is about to wrap up, so we're just going to push twice as hard to get it through next time. But y'all need this in your state too. You need to push. You need to find out, what is your system doing to monitor these folks? Are they doing their job? How are your schools protecting your children from these people being on campus? Because let's face it, these are felons. Can we really trust them to be honest and upfront and telling us the truth? Maybe some of them, sure. But in general, they've lost the right to our trust. That's something that has to be earned. And people trusted him because they didn't know. And they should have known. Things need to change with this whole good behavior, bad behavior thing when people are in prison. If you want to give them credit for good behavior, great. But they also have to be accountable and have consequences for their bad behavior. And that should go against any good behavior credits that they have accrued. There needs to be truth in sentencing for certain crimes, and this is one of them. They gave him 20 years. He should have done the 20 years. Like I said, these families were let down on multiple levels, starting with the Department of Corrections, and then just on down the line, and every day it's something else. So please, like I said, I don't care where you're from. call our governor and tell him what you think about the bill that he just vetoed about the tribal SOs. Tell him what you think about this case, because he's the one that was like, oh, the OSBI, you need to get on this. Well, at first it was great, and now they're not even keeping the families updated. So what the hell is going on? Nobody knows, and nobody can get any answers. So tell him what you think. Bombard this guy. Send him letters, email him, call him, whatever. Drive him bananas until he does something. I would really appreciate it if you would do that. So that's kind of my rant. I'm sorry this video was probably all over the place, but like I said, this isn't what I had planned. As you can see, I did not have my handy dandy notebook of notes today to go by. I just winged it. This is off the cuff. I'm fired up, I'm fed up, and I don't feel good. So it is what it is, but thank you for watching. I do appreciate it. Please give it a thumbs up. Like I said before, it's not for me, it's for the algorithm to help get it out there to as many people as possible, because everybody needs to see and everybody needs to remember, hey, this is still going on in Oklahoma. All this other stuff is happening in the world and the news is moving on, but we're not. We're still fighting for answers here. And we're not going to let it go. So please like it, share it, hashtag be like Ivy, hashtag Henryetta tragedy, Henryetta horror, Oklahoma, anything. Share it with everybody you can think of, your lawmakers, Dateline, whoever. But let's keep the story going. Okay? So please, thumbs up. If you haven't already subscribed, I would love for you to do so. We're growing, which is great because we can get it out there to more people. The more people that subscribe, the more people will potentially like and share. So thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. And as always, I hope you guys have a fabulous rest of your day. Thank you for spending about an hour with me today, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye.